Imagine this. The workday starts, but documents won't open, servers feel sluggish, and a note appears on every screen. It says your data is locked. There's a timer. There's a price. Pay, or the problem gets worse. Ransomware is malicious software designed to deny access to your data and systems, and then charge you to get it back. But the twist is that today's ransomware isn't just a rogue program, it's a business model. Behind the scenes are professional crews that operate like companies, with playbooks, help desks, and revenue targets. Here's the one big difference from the familiar baseline of malware you can clean up. With ransomware, the damage isn't just the infection. The damage is leverage. Attackers use standard, strong encryption, real cryptography, to change the locks on your data, and they time the attack to maximize pressure. They go after your backups, your deadlines, and your reputation, not just your laptops. Why care? Because this isn't about a few files. It's about operations, payroll, delivery schedules, patient care, and public trust. Downtime becomes days or weeks, not minutes. Legal and regulatory issues come into play. And even if you restore, stolen data can be used to keep pressure on. An analogy helps. Picture a professional burglary crew. They enter quietly. They explore the building. They find where the valuables are. And they make copies of the sensitive documents. Then, before leaving, they change all the locks. In the morning, you can't get into rooms you own, and the crew demands payment to hand over the new keys, plus a promise not to post the documents they copied. Put differently, it's a mix of break-in, lock change, and blackmail, all wrapped in software. So let's keep the early picture simple before we go deeper. Ransomware operators care about three things: access to your environment, leverage over your data and time, and control of the keys that reverse the damage. The details of how they do it can vary, but that trio shows up in almost every case. Now, how does a modern campaign actually play out from the first break-in to recovery? A clear mental model here pays off. It starts with a foothold. Attackers get in using familiar doors, a convincing phishing email that leads to a malware download, stolen remote desktop or VPN credentials bought from another group, a vulnerability on an internet-facing service that never got patched, or a misused remote management tool that's meant for admins, not adversaries. They rarely rush. Once inside a single machine, they make sure they can return. That could be a small program that runs when the system reboots, or a scheduled task that reestablishes contact. This is where strong authentication, fast patching, and careful email security matter, because preventing the foothold is the cleanest win. What matters here is the mindset. Treat any ransomware story as a full-scope intrusion, not just a crypto problem. The encryption is the finale. The earlier chapters are where defenders have the best chances to interrupt the plot. With a foothold, the next move is to learn the terrain and expand control. The attackers map the network to find high-value systems, file servers with documents, databases with customer records, hypervisors that host entire virtual machines, and critically, backup systems. They pivot from one machine to another using remote administration tools that your own IT team might use. They hunt for credentials to elevate privileges. Administrator rights give them reach, and with domain-wide control, they can touch hundreds of systems quickly. This is the phase where segmentation and visibility pay dividends. Network segments that cordon off critical servers slow attackers down. Privileged access management that requires additional checks for admin actions raises friction. Endpoint detection tools can pick up patterns like unusual remote logins or large-scale changes to security controls. In other words, this is the hallway where the intruder can be spotted before they reach the vault. Before any locks get changed, one quiet task takes place: staging. Attackers line up their tools, get the ransomware payload to the right machines, and, this is key, try to neutralize your lifelines. They delete shadow copies, which are the quick snapshots that allow you to roll a Windows volume back in time. They disable or tamper with backup agents. If a network-attached storage device looks like just another share to a compromised admin account, they alter or wipe its snapshots. They want to ensure that when encryption begins, restoration is slow, messy, or impossible. At the same time, many crews quietly copy data out. Sensitive contracts, design files, patient records, financial statements, anything that would be painful to see posted on a public site. This creates a second lever. Even if you restore from backups, the threat of publication keeps the pressure on. That's the modern double extortion model. The decryption key is one product, silence is another. Take a moment with that. The encryption is visible and dramatic, but the business leverage often comes from what was stolen days earlier. When everything is staged, the lock change begins. The ransomware is triggered across many systems, sometimes at night via a scheduled task, sometimes coordinated through remote access. It walks through file systems and network shares, aiming for data that keeps the business running: documents, spreadsheets, databases, virtual machine images. Usually it avoids the core operating system, so devices still boot. A note appears in every folder explaining what happened and how to reach the operators, often through a Tor-hidden website that gives each victim a private portal. Here's where the engineering shows. Modern ransomware uses hybrid encryption. The simple version is this. For each file or each target system, the malware creates a fresh, random secret key that's very fast for encrypting large amounts of data. That's called symmetric encryption. Then, to prevent victims from using that secret key without paying, the malware locks that key with a different system that uses a public key and a private key. Only the attackers hold the private half. That's asymmetric encryption. The result is speed at scale plus centralized key control. There's a certain elegance to it. The two approaches complement each other to make the process both efficient and hard to reverse. Some strains even encrypt only parts of each file, every few blocks, so the file becomes unusable, but the process runs faster and might slip past basic anomaly detection. That partial technique trades completeness for speed, which matters when the goal is to lock terabytes before anyone can pull the plug. The key idea is that there's no practical hacking the crypto when this is done correctly. Algorithms like AES with strong keys and public key systems with proper key lengths are designed to withstand brute force. The realistic path isn't to crack the math, it's to prevent or disrupt the attack earlier, or to recover cleanly. After encryption, the customer service element begins. The notes direct victims to a site, often with a chat interface, a countdown, and sample files to prove the operators can decrypt. Messages offer a discount if payment is quick and threaten to leak stolen data if it isn't. Sometimes there's a third lever: pressure on customers or partners, or threats of extra trouble like a flood of traffic against public websites. Payment, when it happens, is usually in cryptocurrency. What's being sold isn't just a decryption tool, it's downtime reduction and a promise of quiet. This phase is where incident response, legal, and communications converge. Decisions are made under time pressure: negotiate or not, restore or pay, notify regulators and customers, bring in law enforcement, and coordinate the technical cleanup. A prepared playbook here changes outcomes. Then comes recovery and containment. If you have backups that survived, systems are rebuilt and data is restored. Credentials are rotated. Persistence mechanisms, those quiet ways attackers ensured a return, are hunted down and removed. If payment happened, a decryption tool is used to work through affected files or systems. That process can be slow, and the tools vary in quality. Meanwhile, monitoring stays heightened to catch any signs of a repeat intrusion. This is where architecture decisions made months earlier show their value. Backups that were isolated, offline copies, immutable cloud snapshots, or air-gapped media are far harder for attackers to destroy. Test restores that aren't just theory-reduced surprises. Network segments that contain noisy workloads stop the blast radius, and clear roles between IT, security, and business leadership reduce decision friction on a bad day. To ground this with a concrete story, consider a mid-size manufacturer running a Windows domain with about 500 people. A phishing email mimicking a logistics partner lands in one mailbox. A malicious attachment is opened, and a small loader reaches out to the attacker's control server. Over days, the crew harvests an admin credential, moves through remote desktop sessions, and maps the environment. They find the main file server with 10 terabytes of design and ERP data. They notice a backup appliance that looks like just another network share to the compromised domain. 200 gigabytes of sensitive designs and contracts are quietly copied out to an external server. On the inside, shadow copies on critical servers are deleted with a benign-looking administrative command. The backup agent service accounts are disabled. Snapshot retention on the backup device is changed. In the early hours of the morning, a task launches the ransomware across 150 systems. Within a few hours, most of the important data is encrypted or partially encrypted. Extensions change. Notes appear. A Tor site displays samples of the stolen documents and a 7-day deadline with a price that lands in the mid-7 figures. Attempts to restore from the backup appliance fail because it too was reachable from the compromised domain and its snapshots were erased. The response team isolates affected network segments, rebuilds key servers from known good offline images, and checks with law enforcement and vendors to see whether a free or known decryptor exists for this ransomware family. Negotiation is considered alongside technical recovery. It's a tough day. Let's slow that down for a second and focus on the leverage. The reason this worked wasn't clever mathematics. Attackers used the same algorithms you'd find in legitimate encryption software. It worked because they controlled identity and time. They had admin rights, reached backups, and coordinated an overnight event. There's an understated technical marvel here: coordinating simultaneous encryption across a domain, throttling processes so systems remain responsive, skipping operating system files to keep machines bootable. These are careful design choices. The sophistication isn't about inventing new cryptography, it's about operational discipline. The opposite side of that coin is encouraging. Because the crypto is standard and solid, defenders can focus on the parts of the kill chain that are controllable: authentication, patch hygiene, segmentation, backup isolation, monitoring for behaviors that precede encryption, like large-scale snapshot deletions, unexpected admin account creation, or lateral movement patterns. So the simple version is, hunt for the burglars while they're still in the hallways. A few practical signals help: unusual remote desktop usage after hours, brand new admin accounts or sudden membership changes in privileged groups, backup jobs that fail across multiple systems in a short window, a spiky increase in files renamed or processes opening many files quickly on a server. None of these prove ransomware by themselves, but together, they form a recognizable prelude. Some limits and trade-offs are good to keep in mind. Ransomware's crypto can be flawed. When groups reuse keys, store secrets where forensics can find them, or implement weak key generation, researchers sometimes produce free decryptors. It's always worth identifying the family and variant and checking with reputable sources before making payment decisions. Another limit is connectivity. Many campaigns rely on command and control at some stage to deliver tools, register keys, or exfiltrate data. While the encryption can run with a public key embedded in the malware, earlier phases still benefit from reliable network paths. Egress controls, DNS filtering, and proxying outbound traffic make life harder for attackers coordinating a large event. And consider the physics of encryption. Walking a file system and transforming terabytes of data takes CPU and disk time. That creates patterns behavioral tools can catch if tuned well. It's not infinite time, but it's time. A response team that can isolate a segment or shut down a file server quickly can turn a catastrophic event into a contained one. Some common misconceptions are worth clearing away. Ransomware isn't mainly an encryption problem. The algorithmic part matters, but the winning moves for defenders are earlier: stopping initial access, catching lateral movement, and keeping backups out of reach. Backups alone aren't a silver bullet either, if they're just another network share from the perspective of a compromised domain admin. And the idea that someone can surely break the encryption if needed doesn't reflect how strong modern cryptography is when correctly implemented. A final misconception: paying guarantees safety. Decryption tools can be buggy or slow, stolen data can still be leaked or sold, and if the original access paths aren't closed, re-attack is possible. So what helps organizations walk into this with resilience? Design backups as if a hostile admin has domain control. That means having at least one tier that isn't modifiable from the production network: offline tapes, immutable cloud snapshots, or storage that enforces write-once retention controls. Backups shouldn't just exist. They should be regularly restored in tests that mirror reality, including large datasets and complex applications. Segment and prioritize the infrastructure. Put file servers, virtualization hosts, and key databases behind more restrictive controls than ordinary user networks. The systems attackers would encrypt first deserve more hurdles and more eyes. Treat any ransomware incident as a full intrusion until proven otherwise. That means involving incident response experts, legal counsel, and communications early, assuming credential theft and data exfiltration occurred, and collecting forensic evidence before wiping everything down, and build detection around the prelude. If a monitoring system sees mass deletion of shadow copies or a sudden spike in backup job failures, elevate those signals. If unusual admin activity appears from unexpected hosts, treat it as a possible early stage of a ransomware event, not routine noise. There's another quiet engineering moment to appreciate. Hybrid encryption gives attackers speed for big files and centralized control over keys. That same pattern, fast symmetric encryption for bulk data, protected by public key wrapping, is used in legitimate systems from secure messaging to cloud storage. The underlying math is powerful and neutral. The difference is intent. That perspective helps focus on where intent translates into action: identity, reach, and timing. For organizations thinking about architecture, a simple mental checklist can help. Which systems, if locked today, would stop the business tomorrow. Where do those live? Who can reach them? And from where? How do backups of those systems differ from backups of less critical ones? If an attacker had the keys of a domain admin, what could they change in 30 minutes? Those questions lead to concrete changes, more friction around admin actions, fewer pathways between segments, and backup tiers with different trust boundaries. During an incident, the first containment moves lean on those designs. Isolate affected segments to stop lateral spread, temporarily disable scheduled tasks and software deployment tools that could be used to relaunch payloads, rotate credentials starting with high-privilege accounts and service identities. If encryption is in progress, prioritize cutting power or network connectivity to the most critical file servers rather than waiting for graceful shutdowns. These aren't prescriptions so much as patterns seen across many recoveries. When the dust settles, completing the loop matters. Close the initial access paths, whether that was a vulnerable edge service, a phishing-exposed endpoint, or a misused remote tool. Review logging and retention. Many teams discover gaps only when they need a record of what happened. And invest in the boring parts. Asset inventories that are current, identity hygiene, and patch cycles that reduce the pool of exploitable systems. This might sound like a lot, and it is. But the encouraging truth is that the biggest gains aren't exotic. They are architectural choices and operational habits that make it hard for an intruder to gain domain-wide control and hard to kill the backups. They are detection patterns that give a few precious hours back. They are runbooks practiced enough that decisions are routine under stress. Bringing it back to the mental model, ransomware is best understood as a professional burglary operation in software. It needs access, it seeks leverage, and it uses time pressure to turn that leverage into payment. Defenders win by removing the easy entrances, constraining movement inside, and making sure there are spare keys stored where the intruder can't reach. The rest, cryptographic details and the specific ransomware brand names, are important but secondary to that frame. If this helped build a clear picture of how ransomware works and how to think about defending against it, a like and subscribe helps make more videos like this.